came back. They found his clothing scattered somewhere down the track, and he won't be down on Wall Street anymore. He had a home, love of a girl, but then get lost sometimes as years unfurl. One day he crossed some line and he was too much in this world, but I guess it doesn't matter anymore. In a New York minute, everything can change. In a New York minute, things are getting really strange. Everything can change. In a New York minute. Lying in the darkness, hear the sirens wail. Somebody going to emergency, somebody's going to jail. You find somebody to love in this world, you better hang on to the nail. The wolf is always at the door. In a New York minute, everything can change. In a New York minute, things can get a little strange. In a New York minute, everything's a New York minute. In these days, darkness falls early, people rush home to the ones they love. You better take a fool's advice, take care of your own. One day they'll hear it, next day they're gone. Pull my coat around my shoulders, took a walk down through the park. Leaves were falling around me, groaning city in the gathering dark. On some solitary rock, a desperate lover left his mark. Baby, I've changed, please come back. But the head makes cloudy, the heart makes very clear. You know the days were so much brighter the time when she was here. I know there's somebody somewhere make these dark clouds disappear.
It's Friday night. This is your host, Larry K, on another episode of the Logic and Larry podcast. I'm in my New York state of mind, my Newark, North New Jersey state of mind, looking out at planes flying into Newark Liberty International Airport. Looking at the Empire State Building lit up a purple and scarlet. As I look over Broad Street, there's a Maiden concert going on at the Prudential Center. A lot of rockers enjoying themselves tonight, which I'm all about. I got so much to talk to you guys about tonight, and I am so glad that you have joined me tonight for another edition of the Logic and Larry podcasting. This is where we're at, man. There's so much going on. There's so much anger in the world. Tonight's theme is just, you missed the point. Tonight's theme is missing the point and anger, because that's all I see out here is people missing the point in these political debates. They are not honed in. They are not focused on their actual philosophical positions. They just want to fight for the sake of fighting, and it's killing our society. But I will tell you this. And Cy is in the house. That is beautiful. Siren, we missed you. We have missed you. CLR is angry. I'm angry. A lot of people are angry tonight. We're going to talk. We're going to talk it out here on the Logic and Larry podcast. We're going to talk it out. We're going to have a conversation. So if you're joining us from Arizona, from New Jersey, North Carolina, Louisiana, wherever you're at, Pennsylvania, and a little bit later we're going to have Sean Political Action Bracken on again because the midterms are coming up. We're going to hear what the latest stage of the race is for the Congress. Now, everything I say in this podcast is strictly my opinion as a private citizen. Nothing I say to you is in any way reflective of any other individual or any other entity. I am not speaking to you in an official capacity. I am not endorsing a political candidate. I am not endorsing one party or the other. I am just speaking to you in general about politics and the news and the latest. And the latest on the domestic front is that inflation is high, guys. Inflation is high. Inflation is killing a lot of American consumers, and it's number one at the ballot box. That's the number one issue that Americans are talking about right now, inflation. And I got to be honest with you. I'm probably making more money than I've ever made, and yet I feel about as broke as one of the times I was brokest. Because no matter how much money I can make, everything costs more. Everything's expensive. And voters are concerned about that. Now, there's a lot of factors that go into inflation, right? COVID, the supply lines. This was expected. The two Trump stimuluses, the Biden stimulus. Thank God Bernie didn't get his Bernie bill through. It would have been even worse inflation. Inflation is at an all-time high. It's killing Americans. I feel you, you feel me. Our wallets feel each other. We are hurting. We understand it. But we're still blessed to live in a country where we have the freedom to even deal and be concerned with inflation, right? Because we at least have a little bit of money in our pockets. We're at least surviving. Some people somewhere else wish they were able to survive at the level we are. So we got to be thankful. We got to be grateful. Thanksgiving's coming up. Remember that. The border is still in crisis. I saw something the other day. And by the way, if you haven't yet decided to check it out, I would recommend you check out News Nation. News Nation. It's channel 82 in New Jersey, Greater Newark. News Nation. It's an alternative to the cable news, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News. It's an alternative. News Nation. It's Dan Abrams. Dan Abrams, who is the purveyor of Live PD, the purveyor of all these court shows. Dan Abrams is running a whole channel, a whole cable news channel called News Nation. And Chris Cuomo he hired in a primetime slot. And it's unbiased, centrist news. And it's good stuff. It's actual news. When they say breaking news, they actually have breaking news. One of the things they were delving into the other day was the border crisis. And they were talking about how in Arizona, in one county in Arizona, they are actually putting shipping containers, stacking shipping containers in Yuma County, I believe. Stacking shipping containers along the border to try to deter illegal activity. And they had the sheriff from Yuma County on TV, and he was saying, look, he understands it's federal jurisdiction to deal with the border. It's a federal, purview to deal with the border. But the federal government was refusing to step up, and he was saying, look, the shipping containers have actually corralled illegal traffic into one area where we're able to actually arrest them. And we've arrested people with fentanyl. We've arrested people who are human trafficking. We've arrested plenty of people. We've detained people who then have their hearings. If the federal government's not going to step up, then we are going to step up. And that is, I think, maybe the biggest deficiency currently going on with the Biden administration is the border crisis. If President Biden or Vice President Kamala Harris would just go down there and at least show that they cared about it, it might help them a little bit, because the idea that there isn't a crisis at the border is a misnomer. And trust me, I'm going to get into Trumpies. Don't worry. But I have to be honest and I have to be real, because that's why you guys listen to me, right? I'm objective. There's a crisis at the border and it's not being addressed. It's not being addressed. So they've been stacking shipping containers at the border to try to thwart it in Arizona. And we have that on the domestic front. But what's more pressing on the domestic? Maybe not more pressing, but what's another news headline on the domestic front tonight? Well, some of you might know that President Biden recently passed, through administrative order, student loan forgiveness up to $20,000, $10,000 for every borrower. But if you had a Perkins loan, which I did, which means you were a lower income student, if you were a lower income student, you were able to qualify for up to $20,000 in student loan forgiveness, which I already applied for. I already submitted my application. If you haven't done it, you should submit your application. Now, that's not going to alleviate my debt. No, I'm alleviating my debt through doing 10 years of public service. But that may bring my monthly payment down when it kicks back in January. It may bring my monthly payment down a couple bucks, right? So I applied for the $20,000 in loan forgiveness, but just now, just before I got on the air, just today, it was announced that the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals has halted student loan forgiveness. So right now, if you put an application in, you can't get a refund. You can't get forgiven. It's been stopped. Even though an emergency application from Wisconsin that went to Amy Coney Barrett knocked it down, struck it down. Amy Coney Barrett was going to allow student loan forgiveness to continue to go through. The 8th Circuit Court of Appeals has halted the Biden administration's attempt to forgive your student loans, because 6 Republican states had filed a lawsuit to stop student loan forgiveness. Those 6 states are Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and South Carolina. And I've got one question. I've got one burning question. It's been bothering me for years. Why the hell is it pronounced Arkansas? It's Arkansas. It's Arkansas. It's Arkansas. If you want to name your state Arkansas, we are going to pronounce it Arkansas. Why is it Arkansas? Is it some kind of weird accent thing? Are you trying to gaslight us? What is it? What if I just started calling you Arkansas because that's what it sounds like? Sound it out. It's Arkansas. I've had enough of it. Why is it Arkansas? It's not a saw. It's not SAW. It's Arkansas, the arch enemy of Kansas. I don't know. Anyway, I don't understand them. Don't understand them. And I'll tell you this. Who the hell in Arkansas is really this concerned about student loan? Why is Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska? I know there's good colleges there, but they're not like filled with a populace of... Why are they so mad about this? Are there banks in those states that are going to lose money from this? I mean, really, why are they filing to stop student loan forgiveness? What benefit does that incur for them or their constituents? What's the point? What's the reason? There is no reason. That's the sick thing. That's the sick thing. There is no reason. There's no reason. The only reason is to be angry and to pick a side. And that's all people are doing these days. Is picking a side. Of course, so see, CLR says that they're mad about the cost. But here's the thing. We have done this analysis. This analysis is well-founded, right? the Northeast and the West Coast pay more in taxes than they get back in taxes, okay? The coastal states pay more in federal tax, and we have a net loss in our federal tax output versus our federal tax, benefits. Whereas these states get federal tax benefits and not federal tax expenditures. So why are they concerned about the budget issue? They should sit down and be quiet and be glad that we're funding their livelihoods, and we have been. I don't understand it. It makes no sense. But Sean asks, is this what I'm going off on tonight? No, this is not what I'm going off on tonight. I mean, kind of. I'm going off on just misplaced nonsense, people missing the point because they're angry and they're being partisan. That's what I'm going off on tonight. And you can see it permeate through every facet of our societal dialogue and every facet of our political debates. People missing the point and just being angry. Because let's face it, that's what partisanship in this country is about, isn't it? It's just a bunch of human beings. I've come to realize, whether it's the far left or the far right, it seems that everybody who's at the forefront of the partisan argument and the anger and the, ideological purity are just angry people, right? Just angry. They're the conservative, the Trumpies out there. I understand. They're angry because they're not, they were sitting in the classes. They were in the back of the class. They didn't know the answers to the questions. They weren't the best readers. So they're waiting. Donald Trump, he gives them some power. Like, you know what? You don't have to be a smarty pants. You don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to be a mathematician. You don't have to be a lawyer. You don't have to be anything. You can just be Donald Trump. You can just be funny in your speeches. And we get it. Where we're going to be, we're going to go with him. We're angry. We want to stick it to the libs. Stick it to them. Stick it to the libtards and the left. Stick it to them all. We want to just stick it to them. We're so angry at the libs. Angry at the coastal elite. We're angry. I want Donald Trump to stick it. I'm angry. That's the same thing on the left, right? The kids that were different, right? For one reason or another, they were different. They didn't feel accepted, and now you're going to accept me. You're going to use the pronoun I say. You're going to use what I say you're going to use. You're going to call me by the name I want you to call me by. You're going to accept me as you are. You are the outsider. You are the problem, mainstream. You're going to accept those who are not mainstream. I'm angry. Everybody's angry. You know who's not angry? You know who's not angry? The rest of us. 90% of America, the normies. No one's angry. We're just trying to figure out solutions to our problems. Mass shootings, inflation, border problems, Russia invading a Western sovereign nation. We're just trying to figure it out. We're just trying to wade through the waters of society and its complexities and its nuances. That's what we're trying to do. Trying to enjoy nature and a little bit of beer and a Friday night and a podcast and some good music. We don't want to fight. We just want to talk. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Speaking of Russia and Ukraine and picking sides, do you guys know that Ukraine is advancing on Kherson right now? Ukraine is advancing on the southeastern territories that Russia has already annexed. Ukraine is close. Ukraine is advancing back on Russia and pushing Russia back out. Because of our funding and because of our weapons that we've provided them, which has helped them and their resilient and determined populace push Russia out of Ukraine. They are marching now. And Russia has blocked grain exports from Ukraine. It's terrible. Lebanon, Iraq, China, all these countries are suffering because Russia is, blockading exports. Now, here's what's funny. Putin continues to shoot himself in the foot strategically, right? He's drafting individuals from his own country. They're not happy about it. They're running. I told you 2 weeks ago, a couple of them landed in Alaska. His domestic critics are calling him out for his bad strategic moves in the Ukraine, for his military losses that he sustained. Now he's about to sustain another loss. Now he's blockading grain exports, which are going to hit Lebanon, China, Iraq. Now, Iran, now it's been shown, has been aiding Russia in their invasion. But these countries are not necessarily Russian enemies. He's going to make enemies out of them by blockading their grain imports. He's making another strategically bad decision because he's not very good at this. Russia is not very good at this, right? Russia's not very good at this, and they're losing. Ukraine continues to march. They are losing. But here's the crazy thing. Our funding is helping Ukraine to thwart a Russian invasion. Now, if you go back to the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, even the 50s, and you talk to any staunch conservative of the Eisenhower ilk, even the Barry Goldwater ilk, right? And you ask those people, what is the primary enemy of conservative America? What is the primary, paramount enemy of conservative America? They would tell you without hesitation. Without hesitation, they would tell you that the primary enemy of conservative America are those damn commies. Those Soviet USSR communists. That's what they would tell you. The Russian communists are the enemy of the American capitalist structure. That's what they would tell you. But fast forward to 2022, and these same supposed conservatives, quote unquote, I use the term conservative extremely loosely, only in the modern usage of the term, but not in the actual definition of it. These same people are supporters of Russia. They're mad. One of the biggest Trumpy talking points out there in the ether, one of the outright talking points out there, is that we are spending too much money sending it to Ukraine. Every time we send them weapons, we send them missiles, we send them money. Every time we do that, they are mad and they say, why are we sending money? Why are we sending Ukraine money? Why is America's pocketbook, why is America's purse string tied to Ukraine? And Kevin McCarthy, the Trump lackey to end all lackeys, has recently come out and said that if Republicans take control of the House, they may very well stop sending aid to the Ukraine. They may very well stop sending aid to the Ukraine. And Murph Dog hit this on the head. There you go. They may stop sending aid to Ukraine. That's a Trumpy thing now? Trumpies are pro-Russia? I mean, are we surprised? No, Trump was pro-Russia. I mean, Trump was bashing NATO. Let's be real. I've said this on this podcast again, but I'll say it again. The reason Putin felt so threatened was that Biden was doubling down on his support of NATO. Trump was attacking NATO from the inside. He was tearing NATO down, threatening to pull out of NATO, threatening to decrease funding for NATO if they didn't kick up higher. Russia did not feel any threat from NATO when Trump was in office because he was attacking NATO from within. Biden was doubling down on NATO, and thus Russia felt it had to lash out. And what's Biden doing? What's America doing? What's NATO doing? What are NATO countries doing? We're sending funds and weapons to Ukraine as we should. And guess what? Russia is getting their ass kicked. What does McCarthy come out and say? That if Republicans take control of Congress, they're going to cut funding to Ukraine? You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of Sonny Corleone. That's what that reminds me of. It reminds me of Sonny Corleone telling the Turk that he was hot for his deal and speaking outside the family. Why the hell would McCarthy tell Russia that when we get in, we're going to help you out, we're going to cut off finances to Ukraine? Why would you speak outside the family? Why would you speak outside the country? Let me ask you that. For a group of people that call themselves patriots, they sure as hell don't act like it. They sure as hell don't act like patriots, do they? Do they? And it's because people are missing the point. It's because they're missing the point. And because they are angry and partisan. The same thing with Brittney Griner. Brittney Griner is locked down in Russia, and she wrote a letter on her birthday like, I'm still in a Russian prison. Now, this is an American gold medal Olympian. A gold medalist, an Olympic hero who has beat the brakes off Russia, beat the brakes off China, beat the brakes off France, beat the brakes off every other foreign country and given us American pride. But because she made a comment about the national anthem, people want to bash her. People want to be happy she's locked up. Are you a patriot? Are you an American because you're rooting for an American sports athletic hero to be locked up in Russia, who we are currently beefing with? You are not a patriot rooting for that. Where's your introspection? Where's your self-awareness? It's absurd. You are getting twisted what it means to be a patriot. You are getting twisted what it means to be an American. We celebrate free speech in this country. The fact that an American athlete who is that famous, who has that much clout, who is on that much of a pedestal, is able to reject the national anthem is actually our biggest source of pride. We are such a free friggin' country. We are so free, like the bald eagles you place on your social media accounts that fly through the air. We are so free that you can be a prominent American and still diss the national anthem and still be an American who kicks the crap out of every other country in athletics, and we still support. That's how free we are. Try doing that in Russia. Try doing that in Iran. Try doing that in China and watch what happens. That is a source of our pride. You don't have to agree with rejecting the national anthem. I support the national anthem. I say it every chance I get. I love the flag. I love the bald eagles. I love America. But the fact is, they miss the point. And the left misses the point, too. Don't get it twisted. The left wants to socialize our economy, which would restrict freedom severely. The left wants to police your thoughts. The left wants to tell you what you can and can't say in public, what you can and can't say in private if they record it. The left wants to police you in ways that restrict our freedom. Both sides want to destroy what it is to be an American, but both sides claim to be American, especially the right. But they're not. They're not. They're not acting like it. And on Logic and Larry, we hold people accountable for their hypocritical nonsense, and we will continue to do it. They're missing the point because they're angry. All they care about is their partisan bickering. All they care about is making themselves feel better. And Barbara says Free Britney was much trendier for Britney Spears than it was Griner. Shaking my head. I agree. Great point, Barb. Great point. Great point. That's how twisted this country is. Celebrity culture and nonsense is so much higher. But they're always missing the point for their partisan crap. So today, Steve Bannon and Ian says, yes, we have so much more. See, this is what I'm saying. There are so many things to be appreciative in this country, but these sides want to tear it down. They want to tear it down. Not because they actually want to tear it down. Aside from a few select ideologues, most of these people are tearing it down just for the sake of feeling better about their own nonsensical cultural, political, voting proclivities. They don't. People. Let me tell you something. People today do not vote in this country. They do not vote in this country based on actual political philosophy or policy or what would help them, what would hurt them, what they care about. Their pocketbooks, their wallets, their religion. That's all nonsense. That's all crap. The bulk of the voters in this country vote on what they think their cultural identity is. I'm either culturally a liberal or I'm culturally a conservative. And if you don't believe me, look at it. You read books and consume shows that are either culturally more liberal, or you listen to country music that touts how conservative it is. Drink a beer out back, unapologetic American flag in a pickup truck. I ain't mad at you if you drive a pickup. I ain't mad at you if you like a flag or a bald eagle. But when you're listening to music and voting and forming your whole identity around a certain political identity, it's cultural, it's trendy, it's not really politics. Politics is about intellect. Politics is about thought. Politics is about self-reflection. No one's doing that these days. No one's doing that these days. No one's doing that. No one. So Steve Bannon today. Did anybody follow this? Steve Bannon was held in contempt. Contempt of Congress because the January 6th committee The January 6th committee subpoenaed him to appear before them and testify, and Steve Bannon ignored the subpoena. Steve Bannon ignored the subpoena. So he was tried for contempt of Congress. And he was convicted of contempt of Congress. Convicted. As he should be. He flat out ignored a subpoena from Congress. Flat out ignored it. He was held in contempt. Now, he wasn't sentenced until today. He was sentenced today. What he was sentenced to today was 4 months in prison. Now, the prosecution had asked for 6 months. The judge gave him 4 months. Not unheard of to downward depart for some reason or another. 4 months. But the prosecution had asked for $200,000 in fines, and the judge only levied $6,500 in fines. That's number one. Number two, and this is a great song. I mean, see, Walking on the Moon, The Police. This is the kind of free thinking I like in life. If I could walk on the moon right now and just get outside of all this petty nonsense, I would. We all could aspire to something higher than this petty nonsense. But we don't. We stay bogged down in the nonsense and the crap. It's ridiculous. Now, Bannon was given a $6,500 fine, but the insult to the injury to the prosecution. The insult to the injury to the prosecution was that Bannon was released pending appeal. So he's appealing his sentence, and in the meantime, he is free. He is free to appeal. Now, the holidays are coming up. Bannon is a criminal who's convicted as a criminal, convicted of contempt. He should be serving the holidays behind bars. Many other people across this country, especially of lower income levels and whatnot, are going to spend the holidays behind bars for similar offenses. But Mr. Bannon got out pending appeal. So we don't know when he's going to go do his time. And when Bannon got out in front of the cameras, you know what he did? He used the opportunity to say that the January 6th committee was a partisan committee, that it was a political witch hunt, it was illegitimate, and he's going to fight every step of the way against his sentence. And here's what I got to say. Here's what I just don't quite understand, and I never will. If you have some angle that can help me understand this as a thinking person, as an intellectual, help me understand. Help me understand this. The January 6th committee is comprised of Democrats and Republicans. There are Republicans on the January 6th committee. Liz Cheney, Adam Kissinger, they are Republicans. You can't say it's a partisan witch hunt when some of the people on the committee are Republicans. Now you say, well, they're just traitors. They're not real Republicans. They're fake Republicans. And they celebrated Liz Cheney losing her primary to a Trumpy. And they celebrated Adam Kissinger not seeking re-election as if that was some kind of victory for the Republican Party or victory for conservatism. See, here's what I don't get, right? You don't get to just change reality to suit your own fragile, pathetic, emotional marrying to a common criminal named Donald Trump. You don't get to do it, right? If you go somewhere and you're arguing with a friend and you call a third friend in to say, well, who's telling the truth? We were all there. Who did it? And the friend sides with the other person. You don't get to say, well, you're just cheating because you like them and just act like they held no weight. The fact that Liz Cheney and Adam Kissinger decided to participate actually shows that there's merit to the investigation. It shows that even Republicans are willing to step up and say what Donald Trump did was treasonous, what Donald Trump did was improper. You don't get to just say, oh, those don't count, those are just fake Republicans, just because they don't pledge allegiance to a friggin' tyrant like you do. That's nonsense. That's crazy talk. And that is the antithesis of American conservatism, which is supposed to be concerned with American values and American freedom and the Constitution. The Constitution provides for checks and balances on the executive branch. If the Congress is convening a panel, a bipartisan panel, to check an executive who improperly tried to thwart Congress's certification of an election, that's literally the crux of what it is to be a constitutional American. So how can you sit there and call yourself a real American, call yourself objective, call yourself a true serious person, and claim that any Republican who goes against Trump is not really a Republican and believe your own reality? I don't understand it. And I've been dealing with it all friggin' week, dealing with these people. By the way, the January 6th committee has officially, as of today, subpoenaed Donald Trump. And when they subpoenaed him, they made it very clear. They were unequivocal in what they said. They said, we have evidence to believe that you orchestrated an event which was aimed at stopping the certification of a free election, that you interfered with a free election and you orchestrated it, and we demand that you come here, appear before us, and testify as to your role in the situation. We demand communications and documents, many communications and documents which have previously been withheld from Congress and the American people under the guise of executive privilege. Under the guise of executive privilege. But if anybody who was even halfway objective or even halfway wanted to listen to any of the evidence the committee put forth, they would know that the communication there is intuitive. We know what was said based on the testimony of everybody else. We know what Trump did. We know how involved he was. We have Roger Stone on tape saying, even if you lose, you just claim you win. We have the whole strategy from beginning to end on tape and in testimony, in evidence before the committee. We already know what he's got. That's why he doesn't want to appear. That's why he doesn't want to talk. Because anything he says will be incriminating. He should plead the fifth. And if he pleads the fifth, that just shows anything he said would incriminate him, because he's done criminal things. But all week, there's been people telling me, no, it's not really anything bad because it was stolen. The election was stolen. I said, well, give me the proof. Every single Republican-run audit, every single lawsuit, every single conspiracy theory hurled at the process of the 2020 election that has been investigated, which is every single one of them, has yielded absolutely no evidence whatsoever that the election was stolen. It's not stolen. So don't try to, now that you've seen the evidence and it shows that Trump was involved in trying to thwart the peaceful transition of power, now they're saying, well, yes, he was doing that. Yes, he was doing that. He was doing that. And I'm curious, what wouldn't hold up in court? What wouldn't hold up in court? What wouldn't hold up in court? I'm wondering what wouldn't hold up in court. Because if you watch the January 6th commission, they put through every piece of evidence that there was that proved that Trump did what he did. I don't understand why that wouldn't hold up in court. I mean, it is kind of a court. And I think indictments are coming down after the midterms. That's my prediction in Georgia, for sure. In Georgia. Oh, yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, yes. I couldn't say that as a prosecutor, that him not talking because he's guilty. I mean, no, you can't use that. But as an American citizen and a common sense person, if he shows up to the Congress, if he shows up and says, I plead the fifth, well, you plead the fifth when you're not going to incriminate yourself. So that means his statements would incriminate him. I think it's pretty intuitive what that would mean. I'm not making a closing argument. I mean, I'm not here being the prosecutor myself. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying he's not going to talk because it's incriminating, because we know what the evidence shows. You know. And in court, I mean, you could bring up circumstantial evidence, and if the circumstantial evidence I've seen so far is pretty convincing as to his role in the whole thing. I mean, I don't think it's that equivocal. I don't think it's that hard to figure out. Anyway, then these people are starting to pivot from, oh, he didn't do it at all, it's all a farce, it was Antifa, it wasn't us at all, to, well, we had to do it because the election was stolen. Well, then there's no evidence of the election being stolen. So what have they pivoted to now? What have they pivoted to now? Well, now they've pivoted to, and Carrie Lake, this magnificent former news anchor, Carrie Lake from Arizona. She's leading the charge, and Trumpies from Maine to Florida to New Jersey to Washington, all around the country are galvanizing around Carrie Lake, because Carrie Lake has started this thing, and now the new common talking point of Carrie Lake is, and everybody's parroting because it's what everybody does on both sides of the aisle. They parrot. They just parrot. They parrot what everybody says. Parrot, parrot, parrot. Got no minds of their own. They just parrot, 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 parrot. Now they're parroting that, well, Hillary Clinton was an election denier. Hillary Clinton was an election denier. Stacey Abrams, she was an election denier too. She didn't concede. She was an election denier. We're all election deniers in this country. 2 wrongs make a right. We're election deniers, I tell ya. Well, guess what? None of them were election deniers. It's one thing to say, hey, Russia had an influence in the election, which the Mueller report spelled out. They definitely attempted to and executed plans to have an influence on the election, and they were unable to prove the actual nexus, obviously, which is impossible to prove. You got to get inside people's heads and say, well, the Russian activity directly influenced my vote for Trump. You can't do that. Russians did try to impact the election. They did try to influence the election. Whether that actually made an impact, we don't know. But Hillary Clinton never, and Stacey Abrams never, staged through months long of preparation and operations, never staged and planned and executed an actual mob upon the Capitol building to literally thwart the free exchange of power and literally stop the certification of an election, and continued to pound that and continued not to concede and continued to undermine the public's faith in election. Never happened. These people keep running from reality. They keep running from reality. And Sean, you make a good point, Murph. Hillary Clinton conceded the election that night. She conceded that night. Trump went out and said, I know we're winning. We're going to win. We're always going to win. It's a fuss. They're still in the election. And then he stormed off and ate McDonald's. That's what happened. It's not the same thing as what Hillary did. It's not the same thing at all. But here's my question. Here's my thing. Here's my thing with missing the point. Here's my thing. Here's my thing. Why can't you just, like, if you're an American and you're a good person, like, maybe you voted for Trump because you like that he was a political outsider, right? Maybe you voted for Trump because you like some of his policies. Maybe you're against abortion. Maybe you're pro-gun. There's all kinds of valid, legitimate reasons why you would have voted for Trump the first time. And there's all kinds of valid and legitimate reasons even why you might have voted for him the second time, even if I disagree with you, right? Even if I disagree with you, there's all kinds of legitimate reasons why you might want to vote for somebody like that, right? Politically, ideologically, right? But if you're a true, objective human being, and you're a true person who believes in patriotism and the American way, why is it so difficult? And you don't have to tell me. Go look in the mirror, listen to Stephen Bishop, On and On. Great song. You hear it? Great song. Just let yourself go. Listen to it. Go in the mirror. Take a look at yourself in that mirror and look and say, why? Why is it so hard? Why is it so hard for me to just admit, this dude is a clown? This dude really, he might have been kind of cool at first. This dude really tried to overthrow an election in my country, in America. I'm not down with that. Come on. I'm not down with that. Can't you just admit that to yourself? You don't have to defend him. Like, people are so, they are so hung up on their own political identities. They are so invested in, like I said, they vote based on this. It's like a sports team. It's like a sports team. You ever see people at sport, that people kill each other over sports? People stab each other, beat each other up. In other countries, they have these riots at soccer games. People die. That's what politics is. It's not because they believe in something. It's because they don't even believe in it. Like, deep down, they're smarter than that. They don't really believe Trump is innocent. They don't really believe there's nothing to the commission. They don't really believe Liz Cheney is just a crazy traitor. They just are so invested in voting for him, so invested in using Trump as part of their personal identity, so invested in sticking it to libs or whatever, so invested as part of their personal culture, as part of their personal mission in life when they get up in the morning. They're so invested that they just can't let it go. And rather than face reality and face facts, they have to just continue to fool themselves and make themselves look like fools to the rest of us to continue to defend their own fragile sense of security within their own egos about Trump being some kind of good guy or justified in what happened. And it's crazy. It's crazy. People are always continually missing the point. Missing the point. You got to get down to the dirty lowdown. Boz Skaggs told you guys this in the 70s, man. But you still don't know? What's going on? I know. I heard Boz. I understand Boz, man. Get down to the lowdown. Understand it. Let's just stop the nonsense. Let's stop it. But I want to pivot a little because I don't want to talk about Donnie do nothing too long. You know what I'm saying? Donnie's going to be on our mind for a long time. And by the way, this is not partisan, bro. I'm not like Donald Trump, from my vantage point, objectively, engaged in criminal activities against this country, right? So it's not about Republican, Democrat, Trump versus Hillary, Trump versus Biden. It's not about any of that. It's about just objectively looking at somebody like Trump and saying, this dude committed crimes. And as an American, I'm against that. I'm pro law and order. I'm pro free elections. So I'm against that activity. That's all this is. That's all that is. Yeah, look, man, you're not alive in the 70s don't mean a damn thing. I listen to this music, this 70s music. I mean, shoot, you can read books, man. We know stuff written in the 1700s, the 1100s. No matter when you were around, knowledge is passed down. Come on now. But look, people miss the point. People miss the point. People miss the point on a lot of things. It's not just the Trumpies that miss the point. Everybody misses the point because everybody's so wound up they can't even see past their own nonsense these days, right? And I'll touch on two quick instances, and then we're going to get Sean Political Action Bracken on to talk about where this country's headed in reality after my little rant is done. First thing I got was I got a text message. I got an Instagram reel share because, you know, the reels are the coolest thing out these days. Everybody has to be a real person. So they send me a reel, and the reel is this it's a video of a drag queen in Texas, in Harris County, somewhere in Texas. I forget where in Texas. I don't think it was Harris County, but Plano maybe, somewhere in Texas, right? And it's this drag queen dancing, right? Dancing to this very explicit song saying, you know, excuse my language. Seriously, excuse my language. I'm quoting the song. It's like, my pussy's hot. My pussy's good. Like, so good you want to eat or something. It's like a drag queen dancing, picking up her skirt, whatever. And the caption was, you know, Instagram deleted my post because there's a claim out there on the right that there's these all-age drag shows, right? And the left says, well, that's all a myth. There are no underage drag shows. You're making it up. Well, the video clearly shows the drag queen dancing to that music. And a young child, I would say 6 or 7 young little girl, clearly in the front row looking at the individual dancing. And I checked the person's page who shared it, and it was this like super conservative, pro-Trump, vote red, screw the libs, whatever like page. And I just sighed to myself. I kind of rolled my eyes because I was like, you know, people are so angry that they're missing the point, right? Meaning liberals saying that doesn't exist are missing the point. But the conservative who shared the video was also missing the point, right? Because he was focusing on the fact that the person dancing was, you know, a transvestite person. And I pivot around my words because I don't know what I'm allowed to say and what I'm not allowed to say anymore, to be honest with you. I'm just trying to convey the common usage and just talk to you guys. I don't know what I'm supposed to say, what I'm not allowed to say, what I'm allowed. I don't know anymore. But the point wasn't that it was a male dressed as a female dancing in front of the kid. I mean, that, whatever. The explicit nature of the music, the song was way too explicit for a young child to be listening to. The nature of the show was far too sexual. Far too sexual for a young child to watch. And it's kind of interesting. And Ian says, dude, my friend works in a county in Virginia. The town brought in kids' drag show years ago. And see, so that this drag show thing is real. So first of all, stop missing the point and stop trying to deny legitimate arguments, whether it's the drag shows, whether it's the CRT, kind of influencing curriculums of grammar schools. Let's stop on the left trying to pretend that every concern that conservatives have culturally is some kind of made-up myth. There is some validity. There is some reality to some of what they say. But see, the parameters of the actual conversation. And Rick, you're ahead of me. Everybody's been reading my mind the last 2 days. Rick's the latest to read my mind. Rick's reading my mind. That's exactly where I was going. The point is, we are over-sexualizing children anyway in this country to a great extent. Whether that was a woman stripper singing the same song in front of the same little girl, or a transsexual individual dancing in front of the woman, the little girl. Either way, it's no good. And now let's be clear. Some of the people who are criticizing the drag shows are the same people who bring their little children to the Miss 8-year-old pageant, the little toddlers and tiaras, the toddler shows. They're over-sexualizing their little girls too. Just because it's straight doesn't make it right. You're parading 9-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 10-year-old girls in front of grown people to judge like they're in beauty pageants. You lose your credibility when judging the transsexual shows. But my point in general is everybody's missing the point because everybody's so concerned about talking past each other. Everybody wants to scream past each other instead of sitting at the table and discussing what we have in common and what solutions there are. It's just like with Trump, right? Everybody wants to scream past each other. He's terrible. He's innocent. He's terrible. He's great. How about we just all acknowledge that the dude engaged in some extremely unpatriotic, anti-American, tyrannical behavior? And if you like Rick DeSantis, who has similar ideological principles to Trump, if that's your cup of tea, but he wants to act properly, why don't you go support him? Because Trump has just crossed the line. Why can't we just acknowledge when things are weird? Why do we have to scream past each other and constantly miss the point? Why can we never find any common intellectual ground ever? Why can't we ever do it? Why can't we do it? What is the human impediment to having honest, realistic discussions in this country? What is the problem? Why can't we get real with each other and fess up? And fess up? Why can't we do it? I don't quite understand. And I'll bring up one more story for you of people missing the point. And I think this was an interesting point too, because this is an individual, and his name is Neil Sollenberger. And his political views, to say the least, are not in line with my political views. They're just not. He has very interesting political views. That he has his own podcast. They are not the same as my political views on a lot of issues. Some issues we agree on, most issues we don't. But he was banned from Facebook. He was put on a timeout from Facebook. His comment apparently violated community standards. And he was banned from Facebook because somebody reported him for a comment. And I just want to say that his comment, again, people are missing the point. So he was involved in an argument regarding the January 6th insurrection, and he was not condoning January 6th. He was saying January 6th was bad, but the destruction was not as bad, you have to admit, as some of the other leftist-linked rioting that occurred across the country before that. He simply said, you're ignoring the fact, and I'm quoting, 100% quoting. He said, quote, you're ignoring the fact that riots happened that were linked to BLM protests based on time and place. I'm not saying that organized BLM caused the riots. I'm saying it's interesting that these terrible riots recently have only happened in association with BLM-type protests. Instigation is no excuse to burn shit down. Self-defense only happens in the exact moment of attack. In other words, if some asshole assaults me, it's not self-defense for me to go burn his house down 2 days later. So maybe he got banned for saying asshole. Maybe that's the word. But all he was saying, and I've been calling hypocrites out, you can't cheer for the Portland people trying to hurl bombs and Molotov cocktails at a federal building and condemn Trump for sending U.S. Marshals to protect federal property and then turn around and want to destroy and crucify everybody who invaded the Capitol building on January 6th, because that's a federal building and that's the same type of thing that's happening. On the other hand, you can't defend and excuse the behavior on January 6th, which was a riot and assault on a federal building, and then condemn and go after Antifa and all the Democrats that attacked the federal building in Portland. You can't do that. You're being a hypocrite. You're yelling past each other. You're missing the point. I condemn people attacking federal buildings in Portland. I condemned it then. I will condemn it now. You don't throw Molotov cocktails at a federal building. And when U.S. Marshals show up to defend the Capitol, the federal building, they are not inciting more of a riot and getting more heated. They are defending a federal building. And on the same token, when you invade the Capitol building on January 6th, you are committing an act of terrorism as well. You are committing an act of treason. You are invading a federal building. You don't get to have your side be right all the time and the other side wrong all the time. You don't get to have that. No one in this world gets to have that. I don't believe in rioting. I don't believe in burning things down. I don't believe in destruction of property. I don't believe in randomized violence. No matter what the catalyst was, what the problem. Now, I may intellectually understand why people do that. I may intellectually be able to comprehend what makes people riot when they're that dissatisfied. But I still don't condone it, and I still don't defend it. I'm consistent intellectually. And if you want to be taken seriously when you're discussing these things, you have to remain consistent intellectually. That's just a fact. You don't get to pick and choose when something applies and when it doesn't. But everybody's missing the point. And Neil, who, by the way, despite our political differences, is quite the debater, because one thing about him is when I make a point that's verifiable, he acknowledges the verifiable point and then continues the conversation with that already settled. If I make a point, he says, okay, fine, that's cool. Now let's build on that. Now, because you said that, let's go here. He doesn't argue reality. Nor do I. The reason we became friends is because we were arguing and he outmaneuvered me on a debate. And I said, shit, you got me. I'm wrong. I'm wrong on that. You're right on that. Good point. And then we became friends. Because we can acknowledge when somebody else makes a point. Not ban them. Now we want to ban people who don't agree with us? We want to report people who don't agree with us? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I'm tired of it. Let's agree on what's decent and what's not decent. Orchestrating an attack on the Capitol to thwart a free election is not decent. It's not good American behavior. It's not lawful. It's wrong. Just condemn it. You don't have to be a bad person. And by the way, all the people that were down with that, a lot of them already pled guilty to seditious conspiracy. They admitted that they were seditious. They admitted that they were engaged in a conspiracy for sedition. They're not even lying to you. They're telling you, yeah, I was being a traitor. They're telling you, and you still want to deny it. You can't be a good everyday American and still hide from the truth and not condemn it. Just condemn it. No one's criticizing you because you voted for him initially. Just admit it now. Let's just get on the same page. And then we could talk as much junk about the left as we want to, because both sides are perpetrating nonsense intellectually on the foundations of this country. But I can't take you seriously when you can't acknowledge basic facts. I can't do it. It drives me nuts, and I can't do it. I can't do it. I just can't. So I just, you guys, this is Logic and Larry, so we're a family. We stay logical. We stay objective. We stay objective. I hope we can continue to stay objective through these ridiculously turbulent times where everybody's just angry. They're not angry societally. They're angry for their own personal reasons, and they're using politics and they're using society as catalysts to express their personal anger. And I'm sick of it. We don't have to tolerate it. The public arena and politics is not the place for your personal anger about your personal stuff. Let's talk and have a dialogue instead of shouting past each other. It's ridiculous. Anyway, I see a little debate going in the comments. That's awesome. I'm going to walk away for literally a couple minutes, and when I get back, we're going to bring Sean, Political Action Bracken, on. I am very excited to see what he's seen in this election because it seems like the polls are all over the place. Different states are all over the place. We're seeing all kinds of different things. I don't know who's going to take control of the Congress in a couple weeks, and I know they don't really take control till January, but I'm excited. I'm interested. I want to hear what Sean has to say, so I'll be right back, and when I'm back, we're going to bring Political Action Bracken on. I want to hear exactly what he has to say about this. I'm just going to play New York Minute real quick for maybe 2 minutes. As soon as I'm back, we're bringing Bracken on, so hold on. Isn't this a great song, by the way? And I'm back. Isn't this a hell of a song? This is a great song, man. Puts me in a good mood, man. Just looking out at the New York skyline. It really is. But I'm going to bring Sean on now, man. It's time to get him on. He's coming on. Give me a second. Sean, Political Action Bracken, the man we have been waiting for, the man the people have been waiting for. How the hell are you on this night, my brother?
I am good. How are you today?
Doing pretty good. I mean, I'm a little bit in rare form, going at the nonsense in this political spectrum of ours. But other than that, I'm doing pretty good, man.
Well, good. I just hope you're not angry.
Exactly. No. You know me. I maintain some semblance of sanity, Sean. So I'm trying to do that.
Right. Me too. And all the craziness.
Yes, we try to stay sane, don't we? And we try to do our best to give an objective analysis despite our personal stuff. I know you try too, and so do I. So.
Yeah, I try hard. Trust me. Sometimes it don't work.
I know.
I mean, about 80%, 90% of the time, I'm good.
Yes, sir. So, Sean, man, I mean, look, let's just jump into it, dude. Take the lead. I mean, you've been doing this. I think we have one more show between now and then, too. I mean, so it's your show, brother. Like, now and then when we do it, and I'm still thinking if you're down, we could go live on election night. So Dude, what's going on out there, man? I've seen a lot of different reports. I know there's a lot of interesting races. Dive right in, bro. Take whatever lead you want, whatever you think we should talk about first, dive into.
Okay, well, I will start it by kind of saying, based off of our last conversation, when everything started to seem murky and everything was kind of not making sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm thinking this week it's starting to make sense in the sense that when you look at any midterm election, when the president and his party control the Congress and the White House, normally it really depends on the job rating of the president, and for the longest time, like we've seen President Biden underwater with his job rating about 10 points, and it's still about 10 points in the average. Yeah, but the weird thing about this year is that up until now, and I say that based on where I'm going, is that we've seen polls where, like, your congressional ballot was not matching the historical trends that we've seen when the president is unpopular and what ends up happening on election day to the party in power. But tonight I can probably tell you that now it's starting, at least with the polling I'm seeing with the congressional ballot, it's starting to match the historical trends.
Okay.
Which is starting to, it's starting to point towards a Republican victory, definitely in the House. Although, again, the Senate is still very much in question, and I'm sure that's what we're going to be talking the most about tonight. But I can definitely say that I'm about 100% confident Republicans get the House.
Okay, and what's that margin looking like? I mean, I know you're not going to have it exact, but you're 100% confident they get the House, and what kind of margin are we looking at?
I say they get at least 20.
Okay.
It could be more, but well, they only need 5 to take control. So I was always thinking they were going to get the House, but it was just kind of like before, like you're just wondering, okay, if it's just going to be like a few races just based off of the redistricting. But now it looks like it's starting to turn into sort of a Republican victory in Congress, and it definitely looks like at least 20. Could be more, but again, if you just look at the congressional ballot and then you start to see kind of what you led into the show with inflation, that's like the top issue.
Yep.
The abortion issue has really fallen down off of voters' minds. It looks like, it's starting to point in that direction of a Republican victory. So I would say at least 20. I'm not sure if it's going to be much more than that, but I'd say 20 is a good ballpark.
All right, that makes sense. And just like you, I always thought that Republicans were going to take the House. I didn't think it was much of a question. And now that you're saying, you're pretty much 100% sure, and it's looking like about a 20 margin. It makes sense based on the metrics, based on where we are, economically with the inflation, based on historical data for midterms for presidents in control. Nothing too jarring or surprising there. Makes sense. What are you seeing? Let's dive into the Senate now. I know you've had your key states. Let's dive into those key states. Let's see where the races stand in those key states. Let's see if you've changed your perspective on any of them, et cetera, et cetera. Let's talk about them.
Okay, so in the Senate right now, it's still. I'm going to really simplify it because I do have my belief about most of the races. So it's basically, to me, it's 3 states, and it's going to still be Pennsylvania, it's still going to be Georgia, and it's going to be Nevada. I think those are probably the 3 that will determine control of the Senate. I almost said House. I don't know why, but it'll basically depend on control of the Senate. Will be those would be those races, and whichever party, because of how I have my map constructed, whichever party wins 2 of those 3 races wins the Senate.
Thank you so much for that, because I was going to ask you, like, to simplify, because it's like give and take. This one flips back. Whoever wins 2 out of 3 of Georgia, Nevada, and PA, they win the Senate, basically.
They win the Senate. Yeah, it's that simple, because I have it as a 49-48 Republican Senate right now. But obviously you need, if you're the Democrats, you need 50 to control, with the vice president casting a tiebreaker. And then the Republicans, you need 51.
Right.
So, just to really simplify it, since Democrats are at the 48, they just need 2 of the 3 to get the 50. And then the Republicans at 49 need 2 to get the 51.
Gotcha.
And hence have the majority. So, it really does come down to those 3 states. I know there's talk about, I know, like, you hear a lot about Ohio.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
You hear talk about, I don't even know what other, Ohio is a big one that they're talking about. You hear Wisconsin sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and some Republicans are kind of throwing a couple of wild card seats out there, like Arizona, and I've even heard, they keep trying to throw out New Hampshire still. But, in the end, I fully anticipate, Arizona to stay blue, New Hampshire to stay blue. I do anticipate, I could elaborate on the Ohio if you want, because it's a lot closer of a race than it probably should be.
Well, yeah, because here's what I want to do, because you've and this is the beauty of having you on every week leading up to an election. I think we've had you kind of from a more macro standpoint. As we get closer, obviously things are going to be more in focus, and your analysis is going to zero in. So I think it makes intuitive sense. But I'd like to hear why, Ohio, which I've been kind of looking at here and there too, just following the news. I am curious to see why you've kind of, and you could explore a couple of the states that you've taken out before we delve into the 3 that you've kind of zeroed in on. Why is Ohio out? You're confident it's Republican. Why is Arizona out? You're confident it's Democrat. Tell us about those states. Why?
Okay, so obviously, Arizona. I could jump to there and just say it's the candidate, which we talked about before.
Yes.
But Ohio, the Republican is the Republican running isn't a great candidate, and then Tim Ryan, obviously, I think, this is just me. I'm not supposed to really be too opinionated in this sense, but I did think that Tim Ryan had J.D. Vance's lunch in the last 2 debates.
Okay.
I do think Tim Ryan won those debates. Just from an outside perspective, J.D. Vance, I don't really know. It just doesn't seem like he likes the campaign, and he just kind of just wants the seat, and he kind of got Trump to pick him, which is where Tim Ryan's ass kisser line came in, and it was a very good line. We'll have to see, how effective it is. It's just
right.
The reason that I still have it as kind of like a lean Republican is just because of just how Republican the state went.
Right.
Since 2016, it has really gone Republican. So for Tim Ryan to pull the upset, it would have to be a monumental upset. And in a way, I have to be critical of the Democratic Party too, because with how close the Senate is and how well Tim Ryan has performed, especially in these last 2 debates, I have to be critical of the Democrats for not going into that state more. It seems like that a lot of the spending in that race is Tim Ryan himself when it comes to the Democrats. The Democrats themselves have sort of focused on keeping Nevada, keeping Georgia. They went into Pennsylvania a little bit, but they really could be leaving Ohio on the table, or taking it off the table when it could be on the table. And I just think that's just a poor strategy by the Democrats at this stage of the game because of how close Tim Ryan is keeping it. But I mean, you're looking at the polls; it's still J.D. Vance by. I mean, I think the average is somewhere 1 to 2 points. So I mean, it still looks like a lean Republican category for me.
Okay, so we are essentially like we're getting closer and closer, and at this particular stage, and you'll have it shot again when we come back in 2 weeks to alter it if anything changes. But you're essentially saying, look, Ryan's done well in the debates, and he's a decent candidate, and Vance hasn't done great. Nonetheless, the metrics, including the polling, Ohio leaning much more Republican, which we know it has. It's undeniable. It wasn't even really contestable in 2020, despite thinking it might be. And, you know, the dynamics of the race in general, they just favor Vance regardless. So you're not giving up, you know, and I don't mean giving up like you have a personal stake, but you're not completely taking it off, but as of now, it's not one of the 3 states you're watching because you're just giving it to Vance because of a lot of these metrics, despite, you know, how makes sense. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and that's the reason why. But again, I do give Tim Ryan a better shot than even like Barnes in Wisconsin. Okay, like
yep.
I actually think Tim Ryan has a better shot at picking off a Republican than Barnes does in Wisconsin because I just think Tim Ryan's run a better race. Like he's been aggressive, and I think that's what you have to do in any campaign, and that's the only reason I give him a chance. But again, like I think that the Democrats are also hurting Tim Ryan just by not going in there and investing more money.
Oh, so neither
resources.
So Republicans are almost thinking it's a done deal. Vance has it, Trump backed him, and Democrats aren't putting a lot of. They're not getting behind Ryan. They're kind of letting him wither out. That's interesting. I didn't know that. That's interesting.
They are, yeah. There are articles about it, about like, okay, why isn't the DNC going in there? And I mean, that's like the big talk. And it's like, well, with the race as close as this, and a Senate as close as this, I mean, every seat's going to count.
Right.
In the way Ryan is running this race, I just have to be critical of the strategy for the Democrats because the Republicans have gone into a lot of these areas. And that's another thing, too, is give credit to the Republicans. They've been very aggressive this year,
right.
Even after they chose some less than desirable candidates.
Right.
They still are close in a lot of these races because, like, they have just been aggressive and just, like, dumped all their money in a bunch of places and have really tightened a lot of these races up. That you wouldn't think would be that tight.
That makes sense.
I mean, it's a strategy, and the Republicans have just had a better strategy. And again, this isn't. I mean, I'm not pro-Republican or anti-Democrat or vice versa. I'm just kind of calling it as I see it.
Right.
And I just call it as I mean, the Republicans when it really counted. Did a lot better at diverting the resources and investing money and opened the map up.
Right.
And as opposed to the Democrats, they're just kind of focused on trying to keep the majority, and they're just getting vastly outspent in these places, and that's why Pennsylvania got so close because they kind of counted the chickens before they hatched.
Right.
And, I mean, I think that's another problem is that they thought that they were going to have it easy when they chose like a bunch of far-right election-denying Republicans, and now a lot of these election-denying Republicans are kind of within the margin of error in a lot of these states.
Yeah, so basically they got cocky. They thought they could pick whoever they wanted because it was a down year for Democrats, because Biden's approval rating wasn't very good. Who cares how far right and how crazy they are will win anyway. Put their eggs in that basket, and now they're not doing so great. And I want to ask you this. your buddy over here, Murph Dog, he's asking about Utah. He's saying Utah is a wild card. And can you touch it? Is it a wild card in your opinion? And if it is or it isn't, after Utah, I want to jump into the three that you kind of highlighted, obviously. But what's your thoughts on Utah? I don't know anything about what's going on in Utah. Is it something to watch? Is it what do you think?
Well, Murph and I have talked about Utah, and actually we kind of asked each other a question, like in a private message. And and forgive me, Sean, for kind of talking about our private messages on the air, but we kind of asked each other, like, what's a sleeper state? And I gave Ohio as a sleeper state, and he gave Utah.
Okay.
And I mean, it's a little bit of a different race, and this could be very fascinating if Evan McMullin can pull this off. Because if he can pull this off, like, he could really screw both parties at will. Because he has said, and he went on Meet the Press this past Sunday, and he said, I'm not going to caucus with either party. So he basically said, like, he's going to kind of accept the fact he's not going to get any committee assignments.
Wow.
Won't be any committee chair, just so he can stay as an independent, like a true independent.
Wow.
In that race. And so his vote, like, he's not going to caucus. And I mean, because we have two independents now. Bernie Sanders caucuses with the Democrats. He's technically an independent. And you got Angus King in Maine, who caucuses with the Democrats.
Right, yes.
Technically an independent. But Evan McMullin is running a race saying he is going to be just an independent.
So now tell me more about this, because I have absolutely no clue, and I bet a lot of listeners don't. Is he like is he running as an independent against a Republican and a Democrat? Is he traditionally a Republican or a Democrat? Has he ever been one or the other? I mean, who is he? What's his story? Does he have a chance? What's going on over here?
Okay, but Evan McMullin was a Republican. He was a never Trump Republican.
Okay.
And he said, and on Meet the Press, he kind of delved into it, that as a Democrat, he says you don't have enough to beat Mike Lee. As a Republican, you don't have enough to beat Mike Lee, like in a primary. So his goal was basically is to run as an independent and kind of gather a coalition of independents, of some Republicans, and the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party did not run a candidate in this race, but endorsed Evan McMullin over Mike Lee.
Wow.
So basically in a way, like McMullin has the Democrats' endorsement, and he also, I think, has a lot of third-party endorsements as well. And his strategy is basically to garner enough support from kind of like Mitt Romney Republicans.
Yeah.
To independents, to Democrats, and kind of form that broad coalition that he says could overtake Mike Lee, who is underwater with his approval ratings in the state. And another fun fact about
interesting
this is
as hell, very interesting. Yeah.
In 2016, Lee actually voted for McMullin for president.
Wow.
Because McMullin was a presidential candidate in 2016, and now Lee kind of went the other way, like sort of embraced Trump after Trump won, and now McMullin is trying to unseat him and kind of call him out for a lot of the election denial that he was a part of. Or
that is interesting.
So,
does he have a chance to win, Sean? Does he have a chance to win?
I think he does, and the polls kind of back it up. I think the last poll I've seen, it was like a 4-point race. So
wow.
Like it's like really, really, really close to like the margin of error. So, I mean, with a lot of these races, and even the big three that we're going to talk about, it's really going to depend on turnout.
Right. Yes.
And I think in a lot of these races, it's going to depend on turnout. And
right.
Utah will depend on turnout. and if McMullen can get that broad coalition,
Right.
and that could be one of those sleeper states. To Murph's credit, it's one of those states where you're kind of like, you just got to wonder. I mean, my characterization of it is a lean Republican state, but Mike Lee's on some very thin ice.
Dude, that's interesting. I would love to see that, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I would love to see him get in there, and I would love to see him get in there and not caucus with anybody, and just like every piece of legislation be such like a wild card. I just feel like it would be interesting, so they can't just shame, one of the Democrats or shame a Republican. It's just like he's just there. Like I think it'll be fascinating. Now, if the Democrats hold in the big three, then it won't matter. Or if the Republicans, I'm fascinated. I'm glad you and Sean do this stuff and brought that up, because you just educated me and I think a lot of people, and I'm going to do a lot of research on him because I'm fascinated. But let's get to the chase here, man. I mean, let's get to these three big ones. Let's get to where we're at. It's winner takes all, 2 out of 3, like the wild card series in baseball. What are we seeing, man?
Right.
What are we seeing in these states, my brother?
Well, I mean, they just keep like going back and forth. Although, like I said, I still feel confident, and I'll get to Georgia in a minute, but I do feel confident Warnock has an edge in Georgia. So I think that's one step the Democrats are at, so to get them close to the 50, which they need. So I think they're probably around 49. Although I mean Georgia is really a toss-up state just because of its DNA.
Yes.
Although, like I said, in 2020 it did flip.
Right.
But
Yes.
I mean, it's still, a lean Republican state for most people's observation. So I'm keeping it close, and obviously you need that runoff threshold is 50% plus 1.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, Georgia in itself is kind of a wild card. So the reason I have that as a toss-up is just because Warnock's probably going to get more votes than Herschel Walker in Georgia, but is he going to get 50% plus that 1? And that's what I'm kind of not sure about.
Yes, understood.
But I do think he has a lead in Georgia, and most polls have backed it up to this point. So then when you set Georgia aside and assume that Warnock should get it, then it really becomes Pennsylvania and Nevada. And those are, these are, and I know just from being here in Pennsylvania, this Senate race is close. It has gotten close. I mean, I think it's basically either way. Like, I think it's going to finish in a tilt margin.
Wow.
Either way. And I'm not even really sure. Like, I have my biases about this Senate race, so, like, I'm not going to get into, like, who I support, but I definitely strongly support one candidate.
Right.
Oppose the other candidate, but just as strong. But, I mean, both candidates do have a lot of problems. I mean, obviously, you have Dr. Oz, and he has a lot of his authenticity problems.
Mm-hmm.
Bagger label is hurting him a lot. And there was even like a focus group down here in Pennsylvania where a lot of people say he's like a carpetbagger, an Oprah celebrity. Like, these are all like negative opinions about him that definitely are true. But on the other hand, a lot of people associate Fetterman with crime, and they also associate him with the stroke he had right before the primary here. Right. And a lot of people are worried about that stroke, and if he can perform the task as senator. And that's what a lot of people are not sure about, and that's why in what is a very partisan state, old school partisan state, why there's such a discrepancy between Fetterman and Josh Shapiro, who, Josh Shapiro looks like he is well ahead. I think the average poll shows he's like double digits ahead, or like very close to double digits, so he's going to win. So now, I guess the question for Fetterman is if Shapiro can drag Fetterman across, and bring him the victory to a Republican candidate that has very, very high negatives, but but Oz kind of took the Rick Scott playbook where, okay, I'm not liked, but I'm going to make you just as disliked as me. And I think that Oz, after a terrible summer, has done a very good job going back to the Republican Party doing just a better job overall than the Democrats at campaigning. Oz definitely has done a much better job with his campaign than Fetterman has, and now Fetterman is seeing his hopes slip away, and it's literally 1 point either way, I think. I think this Senate race is very, very close.
Let me ask you this,
So,
and I know it's not really in the wheelhouse that you come on here for, but I mean, just as somebody out there in Pennsylvania, and as somebody, I mean, do you think Pennsylvanians feel a little frustrated maybe that they got like this celeb Trumpy guy versus like a guy in Fetterman who could be cool, but he's insists on like farther left, hoodie wearing, like do you think they feel like they don't have a choice? Like looking at Shapiro, he seems to me, from what I've followed anyway, like professional, you know, can do the job, traditional politician. Like, do you think Pennsylvania is maybe a little bit of an example of people like picking the lesser of two evils because they don't have that like traditional candidate that they can rely on? It's either a celeb Trumpy or like a guy who's just, they think is like a little bit off, you know, wearing the hoodies. I saw him wear a suit when Biden came in. It was nice, but like just off the rails. Like they don't have that. Is there something to be said for like having just like somebody they can rely on and say, okay, he can do the job, send him to Washington? Do you think Pennsylvania is like kind of in that spot?
I do, and I think, again, that's certain, Fetterman, or what's keeping its race close, because, a lot of people, like I said, even in the focus groups, a lot of people did give negative opinions about Oz. That's
right.
Obviously clear. Like, they don't like him.
Right.
This state does not like him at all, but they also, they're afraid of, Fetterman's hoodies, Fetterman's tattoos.
Yeah.
And the Republican Party did a good job of sowing the doubt, making him look like a far-left candidate.
Yeah.
And now, all of a sudden, this race is tied, just like in a snap of a finger. And I think that that's going on, whereas, Josh Shapiro, obviously, an interesting fact about him is that I think in Pennsylvania election history, he's gotten the most votes out of any candidate.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna have to double checking it out, but Shapiro has gotten a lot of votes.
Gotcha.
In these past elections that he's gotten, that he's ran in. So he does have popularity, but also too, his race is a little bit of a special circumstance, just because the Republican candidate for governor is just so far to the right that even in a Republican year like this, or at least that's the way it's looking, the Republican candidate, Doug Mastriano, he just kind of was probably several steps too far to the right, even for this electorate that does seem to be favoring Republicans.
Yeah.
So there's that too, whereas Oz hasn't taken those many leaps off the cliff as Mastriano has, but
right. Well, yeah,
So it's kind of keeping that race.
It's interesting because it seems like, you've said, and I'm not saying putting words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong, but in just your objective analysis, nothing to do with editorializing. I'll editorialize a little bit. It's seems like in an up year for Republicans based on just common metrics, their far right election denialism has hurt them. And then you have in Pennsylvania where a far right, gubernatorial candidate's hurting them, but then somebody who, whether he is or isn't the far left portrayal of a Democratic candidate's hurting him. Maybe people, and I'm not asking you to weigh in, this is my philosophy, which we all know, which, we can all talk about whenever at a later time, but it seems like people do just want some normalcy, and they're not, anytime you go too far, it might hurt you. That's just my little observation based on all your analyses. I want to ask you about, I want to ask you about Georgia again, Sean. You can comment on that if you want, or it's up to you if you want to or don't. But going back to Georgia, I'm curious about whether you think Warnock has a chance in a runoff or not. I don't know the dynamics of that little element.
That's going to be interesting. Because there is a libertarian in the race. It just depends on what they do.
Right.
like what those voters do after it officially becomes like a runoff. Again, I mean, just because of just all the baggage out there and all the scandals out there, I mean, you'd think that it would be kind of sort of like the runoff of last time of 2020 or was it, was that held in January? I can't even remember. It was January because, I mean,
Yeah,
January
I forget
6th,
the date.
and the runoff was like right before it.
Yes.
So that runoff, Warnock won that runoff by like 2 points. So my take is that Warnock probably has sort of that same 1 to 2 point
Got
edge
you.
in the end, because I just think Herschel Walker in the suburbs of Atlanta is going to get hammered.
Makes sense.
That's just my take. I mean, it seems like the Atlanta area is starting to move away from the Republican Party.
Yep.
And I just think Warnock, in the suburbs, I think Herschel Walker is in big trouble with a lot of his scandals out there, especially if Warnock really ramps up the attacks, which I think he will in the coming days. I mean, Walker definitely has an uphill climb, in my opinion, and that's why I sort of made Georgia the 49th Democratic state.
Makes sense to me, and that makes a whole lot of sense. So that's an interesting, fascinating aspect of that Georgia race, which I understand why it looks like it's leaning Democrat. So now let's talk about the one. So to me, man, I mean, from where I'm sitting anyway, and I just wanted you to comment on this one last thing about Georgia. I'll get to in a second. It looks like, Pennsylvania is like scary time for both parties. I mean, it looks like this thing is, right. And if Democrats are confident they're not anymore, it looks dead to the wire, no clue. Georgia's looking a little more favorable for Warnock, I think, and Murph points out in the chat that 729,000 votes have already been cast in Georgia. That's got to bode well for Democrats, right?
Yeah, and actually that must be like hot off the presses, because as of last night, I think that total was like 500 some thousand. So that's a brand new number, just hot off the presses. And yeah, so the early vote typically has been, and I told Murph this too, that typically the early vote is very Democratic.
Right. And
usually the Republicans vote on the election day itself. So for the turnout to be as good as it is in the state of Georgia right now, I mean, that definitely bodes well. I think it's a good start for the Democrats now, just if they can bank enough early votes to survive the election day Republican onslaught, because that's what's going to ultimately happen.
Right.
Is that the Republicans are going to really catch up on election day and vote.
Right.
Across the state. So, I mean, that's just going to be the big question. But, I mean, when you have early votes like this, and this is better, the early vote total for this election is higher than the one in 2018, which was a good year for the Democrats.
Right.
And it was the year when they had that very, very tight gubernatorial race where Stacey Abrams almost became governor. So if the turnout's already higher, that's a good sign. Now it's just, again, the Democrats have to keep it up, keep the turnout going strong in that area, and they could really defy the odds in Georgia. Although, like I said, for me, I mean the odds are kind of more in their favor.
Right.
And I did forget to bring up those early vote totals, because I had that worked down, but that is definitely a good point.
Right.
About the early vote being so strong for assuming we're assuming that it's a Democratic vote, and I think it is. I think it is.
Right.
Because, like I said, a lot of the Republican vote is on the election day itself, so I think we're seeing sort of like the Democrats bank a very early lead.
Right.
in Georgia.
Right. So now if we're looking at Georgia, and Georgia looks pretty good, and we're looking at Pennsylvania, it's a toss up, but you say Fetterman's tanking just for the hypothetical, and now it all comes down to Nevada, bro. I'm so fascinated. I keep hearing all these reports about, Hispanic voters in Nevada and working class. They're pushing this on WNYC, the radio station, the New Yorker, every article I read. There's this huge divide among Latino voters. They're going off to Trump. We don't know. Nevada usually undersamples Democrats. Who else is there? How much is Vegas control? What is the story there? Because they could all come down to Nevada, bro. What are we seeing there? What are the dynamics? What are you seeing? What's going on there?
Nevada is literally puzzling. A couple weeks ago, this was after we talked, I did change the race of Nevada to lean Republican, but I moved it back because and I changed it to lean Republican the same day that the USA Today Suffolk produced a poll that showed that the Democrat Cortez Masto was up by 2 points.
Right.
So then I changed it back to the toss-up category, which is where I'm going to keep it right now. This week, CBS did a poll, and it's basically the governor race is tied and the Senate race is tied.
Wow.
I think Lex Salt has like a 1 point advantage for the Senate race in CBS's poll. That's like 1 point ain't nothing
Exactly.
for me. Like to me it's like it's tied, and the governor race is actually tied at 48.
Right.
And then the Senate race is 49-48. So it's really close. It's really going to come down to Clark County in Las Vegas. What's going to happen in Vegas, and honestly, excuse the pun here, but I would definitely not gamble on Nevada right now because it's just, you can't gamble on it because it's just too close. I will say that everything you said is true about like the divisions in Nevada, like within the Democratic Party, are just there.
Yes.
Between and not just like even like Latino voters, but like the establishment versus the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party. Like there's like a big divide there too, in that state, and that's hurting the Democrats. And another interesting thing to note about the governor race there is that Governor Sisolak did not get the teacher union endorsement. They refused to endorse in that race, and it's sort of a warning sign for the Democrats that they're going to be in for a fight, because it doesn't seem like that the unions are that enthusiastic about supporting the Democratic Party there this year. But I do also notice, on the other hand, that in the Senate race, that it seems like Cortez Masto is, in most polls, overperforming Governor Sisolak by a point or two. So I do wonder if Cortez Masto, if the Democratic Party will come in and save her, but kind of discard the governor a little bit and sort of just try to come in and save the senator and try to save like the majority. It's really hard to say. And then Laxalt also had a scandal too about 14 of his family members are endorsing his opponent.
Wow.
And to me, that's kind of a lot of people are kind of like poo-pooing it, but I'm kind of like this. To me, it's a story. To me, it could produce enough doubt, enough voters there to go with Cortez Masto.
Right. Now tell us a little bit about the dynamics of that race. I mean, in the Senate in particular, is it a far left? Is it a far right? I mean, candidate? I mean, what are we looking at? What are the dynamics in that race candidate wise?
Well, they seem to be. To me, it's sort of closer. Like Laxalt isn't a far right candidate, I would say. Although I do think that he's also questioned the election.
Okay.
As well, but I mean, he's not totally out there on the far right like some of these candidates are. Like Herschel Walker, I think, is just the far right candidate.
Right.
And like candidates like that, but I mean, he's definitely conservative. He's definitely to the right. And then Cortez Masto, I haven't really followed her voting record too closely. I mean, she kind of seems like a party person. So I'd say it's kind of more like an establishment versus establishment type of deal.
Okay. All right. So it makes it close too. There's no like crazy to vilify. Kind of interesting.
No,
yeah.
I mean they're obviously trying to call each other crazy.
Right.
But I mean, because obviously like you're trying to win over like there's very few voters left. But I mean, in the end, it's sort of that's why this race is so tight too, because I mean they are both not too far out there, sort of like a Herschel Walker or a Blake Masters or like some of these other candidates that are running that are just really far to the right.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, even the off year gubernatorial New Jersey race was similar. Like the Republican was not a Trump person, and the Democrat, although kind of left, and Murphy really wasn't that far left, and it was a close race because there was nobody that was portrayed as crazy. It was interesting.
Right.
So all right. So as of now, I mean, you got Nevada toss up. You got those three. What are you thinking? Where's your gut say right now as of now? And you're gonna be on next week, so you could change it again, but. What's your gut saying right now? Senate.
I would say it's going to be 50-50.
Right.
I won't tell you which state I think the Democrats are going to get, but I think they're going to get one of the two. I just think both of them are too close for me to like go out on a limb yet.
Right.
Because we still have a couple of weeks to go. But I think in the end, like one of them they'll get. I just have that feeling. I definitely feel like that there's material there for the Democrats. I mean, to get one. And I mean, I am feeling a little bit more confident about Nevada, but just because, and I don't even know why I am, because I mean, most of the polls have shown the Republicans ahead, but I mean, I do feel a little bit more confident about Nevada just because of the undersampling in the polls.
Right.
But I mean, I'm not gonna take that limb and say definitively what state's gonna do it.
Gotcha.
But I mean, Nevada. I mean, I'll just say I'm more confident about.
Gotcha.
Between Nevada and Pennsylvania, and I'm pretty confident about Georgia, especially when you've seen the early vote numbers.
Right.
And again, the Herschel Walker campaign's a joke, and I'm not trying to be, or even in this case, like anti-Republican or pro-Democrat or anything. It's just, this is how I see it. I think Herschel Walker is a joke of a candidate.
Right.
And it's definitely showing in Georgia, because like a lot of these other candidates the Republicans chose, they were people that stood up to Trump. All of them won their primaries except for Herschel Walker, who Trump backed, and you see he's lagging behind.
Right,
I think that was a bad move. I think that was a bad move for the Republican voters there. I think they just said, oh, he's a football star, sounds good on paper, so we're going to pick him, played for the University of Georgia. And I think that's what a lot of voters were thinking, and then all the baggage came out, and now he doesn't look so attractive.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. So, all right, so that's where we are as of today, as of October 21st, man. That's the race is looking tighter and tighter. I'm curious and excited about what news you're going to bring us next week, in 2 weeks. So as long as you're available in 2 weeks, man, I'm looking forward to it. It's 2 more weeks of polls, and I've been keeping everybody apprised of the Political Action Bracken posts, which kind of keep everybody in the loop as it progresses. So I'll continue to do that, and then in 2 weeks we'll talk to you again, and we'll see what's going on, man. It's going to be an interesting race. It's going to be interesting down to the wire. It's looking for the Senate. Looks like the House is going Republican, but the Senate's going to be down to the wire. So we appreciate all the insight, bro. It's very good insight. It's extensive. And, if any of these states come back into the fold or any of them leave, let us know. But we're looking forward to 2 weeks, the final prediction and going into it. Going to be a hell of a interesting election night.
Right. And I definitely look forward to finally make those predictions here.
Yeah, so I guess we'll be the final prediction in 2 weeks. So I'm ready. You're ready. Let's just hold on and brace for it, brother. Thanks for coming on once again, my bro.
All right, Steve. Thank you for having me, as always. I appreciate coming on.
Yes, sir. So we'll talk offline, man, but I'll see you. We will all see you in 2 weeks.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you for having me on tonight.
All right, Sean. Good night, sir.
All right. Bye-bye.
Man, this race is not going to – this is crazy. Like, it was more – it seems this is just the way those 3 states are coming down to the wire, and at least 2 of them. I mean, Georgia, we're not even positive about, but Georgia's just looking more like it's going to maybe leaning Democrat. But the other 2, the way they are just up in the air is crazy. And I think in a couple weeks, sometimes we see trend lines, like, right, we see momentum. We see things going a certain way. It's going to be fascinating to see where these races go. It really is. So you guys, look, it's well documented my feelings on objectivity. And look, I have no partisan inclination one way or the other, really. I just want sanity, and I just want what makes sense, and I want what's right to happen. But here we are, and a couple weeks is going to determine, the next 2 years, how things go for the Biden administration and how things go congressionally. And it's going to decide a lot about the next 2 years, which is obviously going to have a heavy influence on, 2 years from now, the election for the next 4 years. So there's a lot to go through, and there's a lot going on. And I really appreciate you guys joining me, hanging out with me, listening to the playlist, listening to Sean talk about the ins and outs of the election. We try to give as much, useful information as we can on the show. We try to make it a fun Friday night for us, intellectual, might call us nerdy folks who are into this stuff, but hey, you guys are all with me, and we just keep it real, we keep it focused, we keep it objective. I will post the playlist with the podcast release, and anybody who is out there, this podcast is available on every single major platform. If you just search this on Google or you search it on any platform, it's always available. So tune in every 2 weeks. And I've had a pleasure having Sean on during the election season. He'll be back on next week, and he'll be a regular guest. And Political Action Bracken, I think, has got a lot of good stuff going forward. I'm looking forward to maybe, engaging in other topics with him after the election. But I will say that, after that, too, we'll have some other guests on, too, and we'll have more other phone calls. And I'll limit my monologue a little, and so we'll have more interactivity. But we always get a good reaction from my little monologues and from Sean coming on and dropping knowledge. We've had some very good listens over the last couple episodes. So appreciate everybody. Appreciate you joining me on this Friday night. I am here as always, and I will be here. And in 2 weeks, I will talk to you again. And you guys know how to contact me. So contact me offline if you want to, need be. And we can discuss anything you want to discuss. It's always a blessing to be with you guys. I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I hope everybody's enjoying the autumn and the fall and football season and everything else. Rick, congratulations on the Cardinals win. And Al, congratulations on that Cardinals win. Let's see what my Miami Dolphins do Sunday night. And from there, we'll talk from there. And until then, I'll talk to everybody later. Have a beautiful, beautiful night. Good night.
Somebody's gone to jail.